welcome back to the Black Carnivore podcast, where we talk all things to do with carnivore. And if you are new here, what I have liked to do is to find people who are having success on the carnivore diet and hear their stories. I think that it is incredibly powerful to hear the testimony of people who've been doing this and who can talk about how they did it and how they achieve success, and that those stories is what really inspires you and anybody you know to actually take the step to give this way of eating a try. So let's dive in and talk to Alyssa today, who has had tremendous success. And I'm gonna show you her before and after picture, and she's gonna talk about all the things that she was dealing with, and then what her experience was like on the this way of eating. So let's just dive right in. So Alyssa, tell us a little bit about yourself, and how you got started. What was going on? What was your health like in the beginning?
Okay, so I'm 28 years old. I'm a mom. I've been married 9 years. And I have two kids. So I have an 8-year-old and I have a 4-year-old. My whole life, when I was younger, I was a chubby kid. I would have little health problems here and there. And doctors or my parents would always say things like, well, if you just lost this weight, you wouldn't have these issues. Um, so fast forward to my late teen years, I started getting higher blood pressure readings at the doctor's office. And they really, at the time, they just brushed it off as me being nervous, like white coat hypertension. And then fast forward again, I had my daughter when I was 19, almost 20. And during that pregnancy, my blood pressure skyrocketed. I had gestational diabetes. I had gained about 100 pounds during that pregnancy. And I had developed chest pains, angina, right in my heart region. And so things were looking really bad for me at that super young age. And I really didn't get any type of I didn't get any good guidance from doctors. I remember going to see a doctor and he told me, well, you're young. You just need to stop eating canned vegetables and potato chips. And at the time I had already tried to clean up my diet and I went vegetarian, and I was just like, well, I'm not even eating those things. I don't eat canned vegetables or potato chips. And so I never really got much help. Of course, doctors would tell me, yeah, you need to lose weight. This is an issue with your weight. Um, so like I said, I was vegetarian for a time, vegan for some periods, and that helped me to lose weight. I did lose all of the weight I wanted to. And I was back down to like my high school weight, which still is technically overweight, but I believe I'm a larger framed woman and I'm supposed to carry a little bit more weight. Um, so yeah, I lost weight. I still had the high blood pressure. I still had the chest pains. I wasn't monitoring my blood sugar, so I'm not sure what that was doing at the time. But those health issues did not go away with weight loss. Um, so fast forward, I got pregnant with my son and I was still vegetarian. And this is when my health took an absolute nosedive. I mean, it was like, if it was bad before, it went down into the depths of forever. Then going through that vegetarian pregnancy and then a vegan year of breastfeeding. And by the end of that, I was the thinnest I had ever been really in my life. Like I was super thin. I was running all the time. I was eating the rainbow, all of these fruits and vegetables, and not enough to support my breastfeeding body. And I couldn't understand why my health was just deteriorating even further. The chest pains were so bad. I would wake up in the middle of the night feeling like someone was stabbing me in my chest. This was right around when my son was about a year old. And it finally came to a head. I went to the ER one day because I took my blood pressure at home because I was feeling terrible. And it was something crazy, like 210 over like 150, something absolutely just ridiculous. So I was like, okay, well, I better go to the hospital. I was like, okay, this is it. I around this time, I mean, I felt like I was dying. I truly did. I was writing letters to my kids. I was giving my husband instructions on, how to raise the kids if I wasn't around. Because I thought, okay, there must be something so wrong with me. I've lost this weight. I'm a vegan. I'm running, and this isn't getting better. I had been on antihypertensives, blood pressure medication. Those didn't help to bring my blood pressure down. And so I was like, okay, well, something's seriously wrong, and I'm just gonna die. After that stint in the ER, and they just kind of looked at me like, man, what's wrong with this lady? Because I looked really fit. Okay. Like I said, I was running all the time and I was really slim, but my blood pressure was just through the roof. And all they could really do was send me home with another prescription for blood pressure meds and some iron pills, because of course I was anemic. Okay, so after that, I kind of had in my head that I was going to eat meat. And my reasoning at the time was, I'm going to go ahead and eat meat because obviously I'm dying and I don't want people to blame my death on a plant-based diet. I don't,
What?
yes, I know it's crazy. Like now when I hear that, I'm like, that's absolutely ridiculous. And I was thinking, okay, well, at least when I die, they'll say, well, she started eating meat again. That must have been it.
Oh.
Kind of trying to save face for the plant-based movement. And you know what? I remember the first thing I had was an egg and cheese sandwich. And that day I had immediately felt some relief from my blood pressure being so high when I ate that egg and the cheese. It was still high, but it had gone down from like that high level that it was before. And from there on, I kept adding in more things. Like I started having fish and then beef, and I was still only eating meat like once a week because I was like, oh, I still want to be a little bit healthy. It hadn't clicked yet that obviously not eating these things was bad for me, and that's why I'm feeling a little bit better now. But like I said, my blood pressure was still high. All this time, this has been a big monkey on my back. This blood pressure and these transient chest pains. I didn't know what was going on with me. So I came to a point that I was like, okay, well, if I can just lose even more weight, maybe finally these problems will be resolved. Because like I said, I was always told if you just weren't fat, you wouldn't have any of these issues. So I ended up going on this big calorie counting stint for like 6 months and working my butt off. I was exercising like 3 hours a day and I lost even more weight. But with that added stress on my body, my blood pressure had went up yet again, and chest pains had ramped up again. And I was exhausted. I remember being on my daily walk this one day. It was February 2020. And I just had this overwhelming feeling to just lay down right there in the middle of the street because I was so exhausted. And I remember going home, and that night I was just asking myself, okay, body, what do you need? And what came into my head was more food, less exercise. And I knew that's what I need to do, but I was just like, I don't really want to get fat again just yet, because I was supposed to be going to the beach and I had a wedding coming up and I wanted to fit into that dress. So I kept restricting for a little while, but of course it was the beginning of the pandemic, 2020. So the wedding ended up getting canceled, and we did end up still going to the beach. But after we got back from the beach, I had really started getting into the whole intuitive eating movement and health at every size. There's a book I read called Health at Every Size. And I still agree with the concept of health at every size, but that you can be metabolically healthy and still have some fat on you, but not the way it was being promoted in the intuitive eating space, that, oh, you just eat all of the junk food you want, all of the Pop-Tarts, all of the bagels, whatever your heart desires, and as big as you get, it's always going to be okay. You're still healthy. Like they weren't talking anything about the metabolic markers like blood pressure and blood sugar. It was like that just didn't exist. So I was in this mindset, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to eat all this junk. So the summer of 2020, and it was only like 2 months that I just let myself go. I gained 35 pounds, from just eating and doing what I thought I was supposed to do, what the intuitive eating movement was saying I should do. And I finally got to a point that I was like, pretty much bed bound. I didn't have any energy to exercise anymore. And I was swollen, tired. I had started having like severe mental episodes, and just gaining all this weight. And I think it was August 2020, I had got to a place that I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like, surely this can't be healthy. Up until this point, I was thinking, yeah, I'm doing what's right for me. This is going to bring me health somehow. And I was in the bed watching TV all the time, watching YouTube, and a video came up that really caught my attention. It was called Vegan, the Epitome of Malnourishment by Sverige. And looking back, I really feel like he is a true, what do they call it? A wolf in sheep's clothing, because he has some crazy ideas and views about things. But it was that video that really woke me up to see, hey, veganism, after all this time, I was still thinking that was the ideal. But this woke me up to say, hey, that's not cool. That's not the ideal. People are getting sick and really, not doing their bodies any favors eating this way. And from that video, I went on to watch some of his ex-vegan interviews. And there was this one interview that there was a young Black guy in his 20s, like me. And he was telling the story about how he was a vegan and he was a runner. And while being vegan and doing all this running, he had developed hypertension and diabetes, and that he was able to completely heal those conditions by going on a something crazy called a carnivore diet. And I was like, wow, because for all these years, I was pretty much scouring the internet. How can I naturally heal hypertension? How can I do this? And that had never came up. I know that I had periods that I would say, okay, I'm going sugar-free. And I noticed that my blood pressure would get better. But I was kind of trying to put the two and two together, that, oh, sugar is making my blood pressure high. But anytime I would try to look up on this, all I could find was the info that, oh, sugar's fine as long as it fits in with your calories, So I heard about that and I was like, okay, let me look more into this carnivore thing. And from there, I watched every single low carb down under video they had on YouTube, and really learning about what eating a lower carbohydrate diet even does in the body. And it was like this whole world opened up to me, because I would have been receptive to these ideas. If any doctor had ever said anything about it, I would have been gung ho, like, yeah, okay, let me do it. Tell me how to do it. And it was mind blowing that, these lectures these doctors were giving about all of these things I had never known about. And there's this one doctor, Brian Linsky's, and I think that's how you say his last name. But I learned that he had the Low Carb MD podcast. So I started listening to that, and I just binge listened to that. Like, I stopped. I love music, but I had completely stopped listening to music for a while because I was listening to that and everyone they had on their show, and just absorbing all this information and learning about that cholesterol actually wasn't going to kill me, and I need saturated fat and all this. And from that podcast, I learned about so many books that I read. And so I had started going low carb at this point, and things were getting a lot better. My blood pressure had improved, I think. And this was the later part of 2020. So like around fall 2020. And I think my blood pressure had gotten to around like 130 over 85. So still higher than it should be, but a vast improvement from what it had been. And this was without medications. And I got into intermittent fasting, and in the back of my mind, I always was thinking about carnivore, and like if I could actually do that. And for a long time, I was thinking, well, that's just too restrictive. I had just come from a really restrictive way of eating. I don't know if I want to do that. But as time went on, I started getting warmer and warmer to the idea. And then spring 2021, I lowered my carbs even more, and to the point that it was meat, and then it was nuts, chocolate, and coconuts. That was pretty much it.
That was my preferred way of doing
And
keto as well.
yeah,
Wine, nuts, and
yes,
and meat.
yeah, yeah, because those fit. And again, everything had improved again, lowering the carbs even more. And then it was around summer 2021 that I had found the Meat RX podcast. I think it's Rivero now, but they had carnivore success stories that they would post on the podcast. And it was in June 2021 that I was driving from Georgia. I'm in Georgia to North Carolina to drop my kids off with grandma for a week. It's a 6-hour drive. And for that whole drive, I did nothing but listen to carnivore success stories. And it was like with every single story, I got 1% more confidence to go ahead and try this. What's the worst that could happen? I already knew it wasn't going to kill me. It's safe, that people are getting so healthy doing this, and that it's a simplified way of eating. So by the time I had stepped foot on the ground in North Carolina, I said, all right, I'm going to do carnivore for 30 days. And I remember telling my mom, like, no, I'm just having the chicken, and I'm carnivore now for 30 days. And by day 21, that's when I got my first beautiful blood pressure reading. I remember it was 117 over 74, and I could have cried. But I was in shock. So I was like, this has got to be a fluke. It's probably going to shoot back up. It's probably just a dip. But it stayed. And after that, I started taking my blood pressure maybe like 6 times a day for like a whole month, because I was like, I can't believe, like, really? That's it? I eat meat and like all this pain and suffering, this big monkey on my back, no more high blood pressure. And when I knew that eating this way was going to keep my blood pressure in a safe level. And when I started having more and more time between, because before it was a daily chest pain, it was like I knew it was going to happen just at some point, I'm going to feel that pain in my chest. But it started being days and then weeks between feeling anything in my chest. And I was like, wow, okay, this is not going to be 30 days. This is, pretty much going to be for life. Nobody can tell me that this is bad for me. Yeah. How could my blood pressure issues totally go away? My chest pain issues totally go away at this point. And I know I was driving my husband crazy for a little while because I was jumping for joy. It's like a dream come true. I never in a million years thought something like this could happen, especially from something as off the wall as just eating meat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And every chance I got, I was like, Dylan, that's my husband's name, Dylan, I'm back from the dead. Like, I'm not dying. Remember all those sad nights that I'm just crying and talking about I'm dying? I'm not dying. Have you ever heard about Lazarus from the Bible? That's me, Bill. I'm Lazarus. And I was just like, I need to share this. I need to tell everybody about it. Because it's great. I mean, it has saved my life. I 100% believe that my life is saved because of the carnivore way of eating.
Wow. That is amazing. What a story. So I have so many questions. So just to go back, like you said, when you were very young, you were already starting to have health problems. Like what kind of things were you
Mm-hmm.
noticing?
So I had eczema, and then I had UTIs. Like from the time I was 3 or 4 years old, they were UTIs almost on a monthly basis. I remember I had to go to a specialist. They
Wow.
were
As
trying
a
to figure
kid.
out. Yes. Oh, yes. They
Wow.
were trying to figure out why I was having these UTIs. It was all types of crazy things like, oh, don't let her take baths. Don't let her wear skirts. Nothing helped. And I that's something that carnivore has healed for me. I
Wow.
don't have any UTIs anymore. And it's life changing because that was almost as bad as the blood pressure. Just knowing that I'm going to have a
Yeah, and
UTI.
UTIs are they can be life threatening. I mean, they are,
Yes. Oh,
it's
yes.
not just
I,
like a no big deal thing. Like that
yeah,
kills people.
I had been in the hospital I was in the hospital for like a week when I was 18 from a kidney infection, from a UTI that had turned into this life-threatening kidney infection. I was septic or almost septic. They said the infection had entered my bloodstream. So yes, yeah, it's no light thing.
Yeah. So any of you who are listening, if you don't already know this, if you think you have a UTI, you must immediately deal with it because I know people who've actually died of a UTI. So it
Oh
is
my
not,
goodness.
yeah, it is not a joke at all. And my mom, in fact, almost died of a UTI, and that was what actually allowed her to discover the cancer and so on. But it was a big deal. I was stunned at how quickly it can progress too. But
Yes.
anyway, let's get back to you. It's interesting that you had things really pop up at such a young age. A lot of times people kind of go a little bit longer before things start to fall apart,
Mhm.
but it sounded like even very young, you were having some really significant things like eczema and UTIs. And then at
Mhm.
19, or you were saying in high school, you already your blood pressure was starting to
Yeah.
rise.
Yeah, I was about 17 years old when I remember going to the doctor, and it was really high. I remember the nurses like freaking out, like, this isn't normal. This is
Yeah.
a teenage girl. And I wasn't, I mean, like I said, I was always chubby. I'm about 5'4", and my usual weight in high school was about 175 pounds. So, I was chubby, but it wasn't like I was a 600-pound 17-year-old where you might expect her to have,
Right.
more issues.
Yeah. Well, I think that this is a lesson to all of us, like your story, where, your weight doesn't seem to reflect like what you would imagine your
Hmm.
health is like. So at your thinnest and where you're doing all the things right, your health was at its worst. And
At its
I
absolute worst.
Yeah. So, like, I think that's a testament for all of us, that getting healthy is like by far the most important thing. And then, the weight hopefully will, respond,
Hmm.
with your treatment of those conditions, but it is not the top priority. And really, getting healthy is the top priority.
Hmm. Yeah, that's something that only carnivore could have taught me, and that health is never going to be a number on the scale. It's never going to be a pant size. It's what's actually going on inside. And I really see, the weight as a like very irrelevant number. What I look like on the outside, this it's for vanity. What I look like on the outside is really, just for my self-esteem, but I feel like it doesn't have anything to do with my blood pressure being good, my chest pains going away, all of those other things that I have healed from, while still technically being considered overweight. Okay, so
Hmm.
I'm a clinically overweight individual, but all of these things have healed in me that were at their absolute worst when I was at a healthy weight. I don't know
Hmm.
what was healthy about me being at that weight.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And so your oh, that was weird. Like, there's something over here making noise. So what was my next question? So you developed some things that sounds very serious. Like I've of course, heard the word angina, but I don't really know what that means or what it
Mhm.
is. So what is angina for those of you who are watching who also, like me, don't know? I mean, I get it's the chest pain, but what's that from, and what's it usually attributed to?
Yeah, so it's kind of one of those things that um, a lot of times doctors will guess at the reason why your chest is hurting. So for me being young, they always said it was, oh, it's your anxiety. But in an older individual, they would assume that this is because of heart disease, because of plaque in the artery that's stopping the blood flow. So you're feeling pain because the blood isn't able to flow as freely as it would if there wasn't an obstruction there.
And stopping the blood flow, like that's a heart attack, right? Just to be
Yeah.
sure.
So if it were if there's absolutely no blood going to the heart, then yeah, that would be a heart attack.
Wow.
But I think some people will have angina for years and nothing ever comes of it. There's
Mhm.
there's stable angina and then there's unstable, and I believe unstable means it just hurts all the time out of nowhere, and then stable means it only hurts with activity, like you're running or
Mhm.
you're getting stressed out. And
Uh-huh.
so I experienced both at different times.
Okay. So angina is sort of like a description of symptoms, not giving you a
Yes.
cause. Okay.
Right. It's
And
not a diet. It's not like
yeah,
a disease. Like, oh, I've been
right.
diagnosed with angina. you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And they never were able to say why.
No, and that I feel like it's kind of a blessing, because I feel like if they had told me, oh yeah, it's because you have atherosclerosis, like if I had a definite diagnosis of that, I feel like that would have really hurt my spirits and been like, yep, there's just nothing I can do, because anywhere you look online, again, they'll say that this is not reversible. Um, it's not a reversible condition, but because of my age, they always told me, oh, you're stressed out. It's anxiety. But because the angina was, it was like paired with the high blood pressure, times that my blood pressure was really high, I had a lot of pain here. I feel like it definitely had to have something to do with my vascular system, my heart, and I mean, I I think one day I would like to get that checked out more and be like, okay, so everything's really good with me now, right?
Hmm.
Um, but
Well, I was just going to
I
ask
feel
if
like,
you had gotten testing. Did they do like a coronary, the CAC test? Like, I know you're
okay,
young,
so
but if
no,
you're already having pain,
yeah,
like, I don't know.
right. Yeah, I would like to get a CAC scan at some point. Um, I know that whenever I would go to the hospital because I had a very bad pain and I was thinking, okay, this is it. I must be having a heart attack. This, whatever, people describe a heart attack is, this is what it feels like. My arm's numb, I'm having pain here. And they would do an EKG, or sometimes like an ultrasound, and be like, no, we don't see anything. You're just anxious, Mrs. Grubner.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God. So that must have really been terrifying. And you're a new mom, you've got these young kids and and a husband, and you're thinking
Hmm.
that this might be it. Like that must have really been horrible.
Yeah. Oh, it was absolutely terrifying. I mean, looking back, I'm like, how did I even make it through that? And I can see why I was such a mess, like mentally, with my emotions, not only because of the carbs, but because that I feel like that's really traumatic for someone to have to go through, because it's not something that is a common thing in your 20s, maybe in your 40s or 50s, but it was definitely a terrifying time.
Wow. And that must have been scary for your husband too. I mean, to not be able to support you, or I mean,
Hmm.
figure out like what's going on, just to have all of these
Yeah.
like open questions and not a lot of answers.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I I mean, all he could think was, well, I guess this is just her genetics. This is really sad for her. She's, because he saw me, sticking very religiously really to this healthy diet, no fat, low fat, running all the time with a stroller, and just really trying, like, really, it wasn't like I was just sitting on the couch and eating Cheetos all day and like, well, I don't really care about my health. Like, I really, really cared, and I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to not be dealing with those health issues I was dealing with at the time.
I mean, you seem to have a very sensitive response to carbs and sugar, I would assume.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
your response is what you, like you said, what you would see in somebody in their 50s, and you were essentially having that response probably from the get-go,
Yes.
even with the UTIs and the eczema. So I don't know, was there somebody else in your family that seemed to have this kind of thing going on, or what do you think about that?
um Well, when I was really young, my parents divorced when I was about 4 years old. And up until I was about four, I was a normal weight child. After that, though, I was an obese kid. Like in the first grade, I was 130 pounds. So, you can imagine a first grader. I think my daughter, she's about to go on third grade, and she's 55 pounds. So I was over double that size. And I know that there's a lot of comfort eating and a lot of binge eating. So while most individuals will eat these junk foods, they'll eat a normal amount. I was really just, get shoving them in, shoving them down. I mean, I would eat whole boxes of cereal, sugary cereal. If my mom went grocery shopping and she bought like a 16 pack of Pop Tarts, that would be gone in a few minutes, and so I feel like it was just at a very young age, I exhausted the I became insulin resistant because my blood sugar must have been astronomical in my little body eating all those things, and the insulin had to be really, really high to compensate and keep me from having diabetes. And I remember me being very overweight. I did go to the doctor a lot and they would check my blood sugar and it was never elevated. But knowing what I know now, that's because the insulin was so high. That insulin had to have been so high to keep it at a normal level with how I ate. Now, my mom, she did have a stroke when she was in her 40s. And
Oh, wow.
so that, but she didn't have any high blood pressure or anything like that until like her mid 30s. So it wasn't like, she had struggled with this from a young age. But I mean, like many other Black families, heart disease is common, diabetes is common, these things that can plague the Black community. So definitely there were family members suffering from those issues.
Hmm. Well, you talked about, well, emotional eating and also like sugar addiction and the body positivity movement. I think that's actually really interesting. I haven't like put a lot of time into understanding about that movement, but maybe you could talk a little bit more about that and what they stand for and how,
Mhm.
how you were trying to incorporate that into your eating.
Yeah, so pretty much what they stand for is that you should not try to go on any type of diet. You should only eat the foods that um, taste the best to you. You shouldn't use exercise as a means to do anything to your outside appearance. If you exercise, it should only be because it's sounding fun in the moment, so um, no exercise schedules or meal plans or anything like that. You should just do whatever feels good in the moment. And to me, that meant, and to many others, that means you eat all the junk you want. If you want a salad at some point, then eat the salad, but really you should eat what sounds good. And what sounded good to me and to a lot of other people is just the junk. And that's what I did. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah. And the working out, I had completely stopped that because I was like, oh, I don't actually feel like getting out of bed to go on a walk. I feel like just laying here. That doesn't sound like fun to me. Um, and so I remember reading the book, and the lady writing the book, she kind of took this stance that, well, some people just live in bigger bodies. Some of those bodies are bigger, extra big, some are kind of big, and some people are naturally thin. And whatever body you're just accept it, and that's just your genetics. But there is not, like, thinking back, there was no talk about, okay, well, how can you live in a way that is optimum for healthy heart health, for healthy blood pressure, for healthy blood sugar? There was none of that. It was just um you know eat and let your body be however it's going to be.
Hmm. Yeah. So when you tried to do like the intuitive eating, did it just end up being the standard American diet and you
Yeah.
binging again, or were you able to kind of, I don't know, have some control?
So initially, I was kind of holding back and I was, buying salads at the store. And I wasn't putting a big emphasis on meat because I didn't realize, that was a health food at the time. And then some of the influencers, the intuitive eating influencers I was following at the time, they were saying, no, if you don't want a salad, don't eat it. You need to, if you wake up in the morning and you feel like having Reese's cup ice cream for breakfast, that's what you should have.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, well, it was pretty much like my first pregnancy all over again for like 2 months. So whatever I could think of that sounded like it would taste good, I ate it. And so in the beginning, it was more like a binge, like free for all smorgasbord, but it did taper off to where I was eating more reasonable portions. It was still junk food. Like I remember I would have like a bagel with peanut butter on it for breakfast because that's what sounded good. Um, oh, and I remember at this time, my hunger signals did kind of go all over the place. Like I was waking up in the middle of the night to eat bread, and crazy stuff like that. And I was legitimately hungry. I was having those hunger pangs. Um, but yeah, I did start to eat more like just breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was normal portions, so I wasn't binging on anything, but the food quality was, just making me continue to gain weight. And I knew it wasn't good for my health. I think that the stress relief from not having to think about what I was eating, that was nice. And I did feel relaxed. I felt less stressed doing that. But I knew that it would only be a matter of time before I really was like 300 pounds and like, oh man, what did I just do?
And when were you vegan vegetarian, or were you trying to like really be kind of plant-based during this whole period?
Okay, so after I had my daughter in 2014, and then when she was a year old, so in 2015, the spring summer of 2015, I said, well, this is the next step, because I had already lost a little bit of weight. After I had my daughter, I was about 260 pounds, and I had lost a little bit of weight just by portion control and trying to eat healthier, and then starting to walk. And in that spring 2015, I said, it's time to take things to the next level. I had heard, because it's not hard to hear about it, that vegetarianism, plant-based, cut out the meat, that's healthy for you. Um, so that's what I did. And I stayed meatless. I did not cheat once. So no meat. And I ended up cutting out eggs about a year in. And I did that until about 2017 when I had my son. So that was 2 years of just vegetarianism. And after I had my son, then I went more vegan because I said, well, if I get rid of the dairy also, I'll lose more weight. So that was about a year. So all in all, it was 3 years of being plant-based. And then in 2018, that's when I said, well, I better eat meat so they don't blame my death on this diet I've been
Hmm.
eating for the last 3 years.
And inevitably, there are going to be vegetarians and vegans watching this who say, "Oh, she wasn't really vegan. She wasn't doing it right. She wasn't doing this, doing that." What do you think? I mean, were you doing it
Yeah.
right? Did you like make an
You
attempt to
know,
do it correctly?
yeah. Well, because I feel like if I'm gonna do something, I want to be really informed. I want to do it right. I don't want anybody to ever be like, oh, she didn't do it right. You're not supposed to do it that way. So I did my research, just the same way I would have going low carb, like, okay, how do I need to do this? Are there supplements I need to take? Which, I had a whole cabinet full of supplements. And I was, buying pretty much all organic vegetables. It was Whole Foods. It was Whole Foods the entire time, except for when I got pregnant and I was really, really craving meat. So I did eat a lot of meat alternatives during the pregnancy with my son, and a lot of ice cream and a lot of veggie delight pizza. So that was a period when I was doing like a junk food vegetarian during that pregnancy. But other than that, I mean, actually, if anyone's interested, I think I made a YouTube channel like 3 years ago when I was just coming out of the veganism, but I didn't want to tell the world yet. So I'm making these recipes that anybody would look at and be like, oh, wow, okay, that's, yeah, that's healthy food. She's doing everything right. So I know, I feel like anybody who says that, they just haven't come upon the epiphany that, oh, actually, this isn't healthy for me either.
Hmm. Yeah.
But
I mean, a lot of people say that, and I just feel like, if it requires a huge amount of learning and equipment and supplements and vitamins, then that's not easy. Like that's not, if it takes that much, like you can't expect people to be able to do that reasonably well. And, I don't know. But yeah, to heck with what those people say. So tell
mhm.
me, you finally, so you get to go, you decide to do this experiment in March of 2021. Is that what you said?
Carnivore in June of 2021. Yes,
Okay.
because we're
Okay.
in
So you go,
2022. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. So you go all in, and so tell me about that. Like what were you eating? How did your family respond? What was that like? Did you have any transition problems? And actually, were you keto or in ketosis when you began, or were you like going, getting used to being ketogenic as well as doing carnivore at the same time?
So I was in ketosis sometimes, because there were some, when I was doing keto, I would eat the keto ice creams and keto protein shakes that were like plant-based but keto somehow, I don't know. um so I feel like when I would eat those things, even though it had fake sugars, it was still raising my blood sugar enough to
Hmm.
knock me out of ketosis. um but so I was sometimes keto. I was always eating a keto diet, but I was sometimes in ketosis, sometimes not. Um, and when I told my husband about it, he is so easygoing. I just have to love him because he was just like, okay, cool. So it wasn't a big deal to him, and I kind of didn't tell anybody else. For a while, uh, just because even though I knew this was good for me, I still knew how it sounded. Like, wait, so you don't eat any vegetables, no fruits, no nothing. You're just eating meat and you're adding butter to it. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Um, so I think when I first started out, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to eat anything as long as it comes from an animal. So I was having pasteurized milk. I was making protein shakes with that. I was eating a lot of cheese and beef, eggs, chicken, everything. And I did that for about a week. And I realized I really wasn't feeling all that great. So I said, okay, well, I better give this a real try. If I'm only going to try it for a little while, I better give it a real shot. And I had, obviously heard there's a lot of people that don't have a lot of dairy. So I cut out the cheese and all the dairy except for butter after like that first week. Um, and that's when I started to feel really amazing, like in my head, and my energy levels. And just to keep things simple for that first month, I think for my first meal, I was having 4 burgers and 4 eggs. And then for my second meal, a lot of times it was 4 burgers and 4 eggs. And that was easy and it tasted good. Every once in a while, I would have something different. Like I might try cooking a brisket, or um, I might have some chicken or something like that. But that was pretty much it for the first month. Um, and I was feeling great. And like I said, in that first month, that's when my blood pressure had normalized. And then the second month, I started to branch out more, eating different things, chicken wings. I started making like an egg drop soup. Um, I I was listening to a podcast about this lady talking about chicken broth, chicken meat stocks. I started making some of that. Um, and things were just getting better and better. The only adaptation symptom I had was very loose stools, like diarrhea. If I had a lot of fat, I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would have diarrhea, or the next day there was diarrhea. And most people would be like, oh man, if that happened to me, I'd be out of there. I wouldn't do that anymore. But everything else was like so top notch and so amazing that I was thinking in my head, like, well, if I'm just somebody who's got runny pants for the rest of my life, then I can deal with it if all these other things stick around. And it took 3 months for me to have normal stools again. So I was really happy when that worked itself out. Um,
What do you think that was
but
about? Like,
okay, so
just what do you think that was about? Just like too much fat for your particular body? I mean, like it just took time for your body to
yes.
get used to. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I knew that it would happen if I had a lot of fat. Like that was
Hmm.
what was going to kick it off if I had a lot of fat. And I feel like from not having any animal fats or any meat, that that whole time, those 3 years, and then being pretty low meat after that, that I just didn't have the stomach acid or the bile, the to keep up with all that. As time goes on, I can tolerate more fat that
Hmm.
I couldn't before when I was first starting out. Um, and then I think it also could be due to just not having that fiber there to add bulk. But I think as time went on, my body just figured out, okay, she's not just stuffing us full of all this twigs and stuff anymore.
Wow. So did you notice there was a difference like when you ate liquid fat versus solid fat, or if it was warm fat versus cold fat?
um, I do know that the liquid fat was like worse. Like I remember
Hmm.
this one time when I was first starting out, I had made brisket and I was pan frying the leftovers, and there was a lot of rendered fat, and I just poured all that on top and I was just scooping it up and eating it, and I was like, oh, this is so great. And I remember that was like the worst
Oh
ever.
no.
Yeah, oh my goodness, it was terrible. Um, but I know that if I at some point I had started snacking on like cold butter and pork rinds, and that didn't seem to bother me. It would only bother me if I way overdid it, like had the whole stick of butter. Um,
Hmm.
but it was fine just having that solid butter. Um, but yeah, I would like to experiment more because I've heard that some people digest like raw suet really well. And so I am kind of curious, like, okay, if I wanted to eat a whole lot more fat, could I do it that way? But right now I'm at a spot that, I kind of in the groove, and like this is just how I eat, and it fuels me to do everything I need to do. And so I'm
Hmm.
smooth sailing.
Well, experimenting can be fun, it can be good, but sometimes it's like, you've got other life concerns and like you just don't want to do that
Mhm.
anymore. So I totally get like being like, this is what works, so I'm done like experimenting. I don't
Mhm.
want any surprises with my stomach or anything like that. So let me
Yeah.
just do what I know works. But I think it's interesting to ask those questions because, the diarrhea in the beginning is pretty common and
Mhm.
it can come from a couple of different things. So it's always, it's kind of interesting to hear how people kind of resolved it or dealt with it in the beginning. So for you, it sounds like it really was just like getting used to eating all of that animal fat again. Yeah.
Mhm.
For me, I think it was trying to eat too much protein in one sitting.
Okay.
And yeah, and that
Okay.
was kind of the problem because I was trying to do these 2 pound steaks and yeah, my
Mm.
stomach was like, no, no, we don't like that. Not at all. So what do you eat now? Like, what did you eat yesterday? What do you eat today?
Okay, so today, for after I got home from the gym, I had about a pound of ground beef that I just fried up in a pan and about 6 strips of pork belly. Um, I've been able to find
Yum.
pork belly that's really, yes, yes. It's a really thin cut, so it just fries up like bacon. Um, I did discover that I'm someone who doesn't need a lot of salt. My body will tell me when I need salt. Salt will taste good. When I don't need salt, it's like the worst thing. It's like, oh, why is this salt on my meat? It doesn't taste good. So that's really interesting because there's days that I like unsalted meat tastes salty to me. And then there's days that I can eat a whole pack of bacon and it tastes amazing to have all that salt. Um, it
So do
just
you
it just
wait to
depends on
salt
what
your
I'm
food?
needing at that time.
Do you wait to salt your
Yes.
food at the table rather than when you're cooking?
Yes, in most cases I do. Now I started doing the Dr. Anthony Chafee steak method where you salt the steak and leave it in the fridge, and it is the best thing ever. If there's somebody listening to this and you're like, I just haven't been able to make a steak that I really like, it it does wonders. I mean, I bought this really cheap rib roast, which usually would be like a tough meat if you just sliced it and tried to grill it like a nice steak, but I prepared it like that with the salt and it really tenderized it and had a perfect sear on the outside. So delicious. So if I'm having a steak these days, it will be pre-salted. But anything else, I'll wait to taste the food. If it tastes bland, I'll add salt. If it doesn't, if it tastes already seasoned, I won't have any salt.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I find that there's a fair number of people who do better with little to no salt on the carnivore diet
Mm-hmm.
versus the others. So I'm always telling people get your electrolytes. But there
Mm-hmm.
is a population that is does better without it. So that, is kind of
Yeah.
interesting to me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it is definitely important for people to know that because I was thinking, well, I need to get in more salt. And I just wasn't feeling that great when I was forcing the salt. I really had to let it be an intuitive thing. Like if it tasted good, have it. If not, don't have it.
Mhm.
But I work out a lot and I sweat a lot. So that also goes to tell you, like, maybe if I didn't do all that sweating, maybe I wouldn't want salt ever. um but uh but yeah, I'm sometimes salter.
But I think that's the most important thing is that you are listening to your body. And I think a lot of times people think I don't know. Maybe we just don't know what it means to listen to your body. But I do try to tell people like
Mhm.
the way your body speaks to you is something feels good, something feels bad. It's something seems appealing or it seems disgusting. And like that's your body talking to you.
Yeah.
So you just have to listen to that. And it sounds like what you're doing with the salt is really listening to, does this taste good to me today,
Mhm.
right now, at this moment, or does it taste disgusting? And if it's disgusting, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna do it.
Yeah, definitely. And thinking back to the intuitive eating movement, I feel like that only works with something like carnivore, because
Mhm.
if you're you can't, or at least for me, I guess I can't speak for the rest of the population, but I cannot intuitively eat a food that is highly palatable and is designed to make me surpass my intuition to stop eating. I'm never going to be done eating cookies. Are you serious? But if I took a pound of Oreos and a pound of meat, on a full stomach, which one could I finish? And I could always finish the cookies every time. If I'm full, if I'm fed, I'm not going to be able to finish that meat.
Yeah. I had heard about intuitive eating back in like maybe it was the early 2000s,
Okay.
and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm totally gonna do this. Like just whatever, whatever." And then I
Hmm.
ate like a 2 pound bag of M&Ms, and M's, and then I was like, this doesn't seem like it's
Yeah.
gonna work
Yeah.
because I'm only ever gonna want peanut M&Ms.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, yeah. But I think that you can totally do intuitive eating once you take out the sugar, because the sugar
Hmm.
just acts like a bomb, and it creates all this noise and you can't hear anything else. But once that's
Hmm.
gone, like you can hear lots of things, and it's interesting the things that your body will say. Yeah. So tell me, what kind of working out do you do, and why do you do so much?
Yes. So my favorite type of exercise is hypertrophy weightlifting. And I'm working out to maximize the size of my muscles. And the health reason why I do this is because the more muscle you have, you're going to be more metabolically healthy, more metabolically flexible. The muscle will always absorb excess glucose, and it's I think Dr. Gabriel Lyon, that's her name, I believe. She calls muscle the organ of longevity. And so I feel like, I can do my body a lot of good by maximizing the amount of muscle I have on my body. Also, I'm into weightlifting because when I was doing those diets, I was losing a lot of weight. A lot of it was not fat. A lot of it I know was muscle because my body looked like it didn't have muscle on it. Um, and I want to be strong into old age. Now, for vanity reasons, I want to have a nice curvy shape and a nice physique as I get older. So and weightlifting is the way to go. If you're wanting to change the shape of your body, it's never going to happen with cardio. You're just going to be a smaller version of the shapeless body you were before.
Yeah, yeah. So you said you work out a lot. Do you enjoy it? Because it sounded like at one point you decided that your body was saying work out less. And
Yes.
so now do you enjoy it? How do you feel about it? And what do you think
Oh,
the pairing of carnivore and hypertrophy, weight training?
yes. Oh, I love this question. Okay, so before, exercise was always a chore. It was always something that I was planning my workout as I was eating that cookie I wasn't supposed to eat, and it was something I was doing to manage my body so it didn't get out of control. And I wasn't eating to fuel my body, so I was constantly tired. Exercise just didn't feel good. It never felt like something that I wanted to do. And it was a lot more cardio in those days as compared to weightlifting, because I thought I needed to do cardio to burn all these calories. These days, I mean, I used to think people that feel like I do about working out were crazy, because I was just like, how? But I look forward to it. And it's crazy because it's pretty much the same workout every Monday, same workout every Tuesday. I have a set workout for all 5 weekdays. And I get excited the night before, laying out my clothes, and I'm like, okay, let me make sure I got my alarm set. I don't want to oversleep. And I'm excited about it. And I get in the gym. I work out fasted because being fat adapted on carnivore allows me to do that. And I'm just ready to go. I'm full of energy, and lifting those weights, I feel strong. And, I keep a notebook so I can see my lifts going up. I can, visually see I am getting stronger on paper. And, it's like, that's what my body wants. And it feels great. It's a great way to start my day. And it's cool seeing, because for the first time in my life being on carnivore, I'm really able to put on muscle, where before I was really busting my butt, and not too much was really happening. I would take progress pictures and be like, can I see a difference? Oh, I don't know. Um, and now, yes, things are happening. I'm growing muscle. I feel like carnivore is the perfect way to eat if you are gonna be lifting weights trying to build muscle. And if you are lifting weights trying to build muscle, uh and if you are carnivore and you want to exercise, lifting weights, building muscle is the way to go, because you're eating all this protein anyways. You're going to be stronger anyways. You might as well really do something with all that. So yeah, it's I feel like I'm rambling all over the place.
No, I love it. This is great. So a lot of people are just, carnivore makes you feel so good that a lot of people are just now getting to the point of feeling like they want to exercise. I mean, so many of the people that I coach are like, I know I got to go to the gym. I know I got to do this. And it's like, no, hold on, wait until you feel better.
Hmm.
And then you're going to want to
Yeah.
move. You're going to look for ways,
Hmm.
whether it means parking further away or getting up and like cleaning the kitchen instead of just
Yeah.
like sitting on the couch. There will be times that you desire to move, and then you will seek out opportunities.
Hmm.
Do you
Hmm.
think that's like what happened with you?
Yeah. So I remember, like I said, I was really sedentary when I was doing that intuitive eating thing. I had completely stopped all exercise. And then when I started getting into the low carb, there was this one day, because when I started off with low carb, I was eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There, slowly, I started to be like, I really don't feel like eating until about noon. So naturally, intermittent fasting happened. And then there was this one day that I was doing my normal, just laying in the bed for the morning. And I was like, hey, I want to get up and move, and that movement that day happened to be like some body weight lunges. And it just felt like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And it felt great. And I kept going with that, and just kept doing more as I felt like it, not, pushing myself to do something that I just didn't want to do, but to do something that my body is naturally inclined to do.
Awesome. So I've been asking you a ton of questions, and I really appreciate your patience because your story is just fascinating. And it is really amazing how quickly you really just turn things around. And you spent years suffering and then just kind of turned
Hmm.
things around in what, 3 weeks?
Yes, yeah, that's all it took to like, you know, make the turnaround. Yes.
And so are other members of your family kind of like, huh, maybe I should try what she's doing?
You know, you would think, you would think so. Some people still think it's like, oh, really? That's what you're doing now? Um, but the people who know just how bad I was struggling, it does really have them looking at meat in a different light. I know I was able to get my stepmom to go full carnivore. And that's been really cool because she lowered her A1C. It's in normal range now. And before, it was like 1 point below diabetic. And And she's the only one who was like, okay, yeah, I'll give that a try without me trying to encourage her much. But I think it's because she's always been a really big meat lover. And she's the type of person that like, oh, I gotta have the vegetables because they're healthy, you know. So I have been able to get her on board, and she's doing great. You know, she's looking a lot better, looking younger, and you know, that with her blood sugar. I think that sometimes she's misunderstanding that you're not supposed to have any carbs at all. So I think those are creeping in every once in a while. But even despite that, she's doing great. Now I've been trying to convince my mom, like every time I see her, I'm like, come on, you gotta, you know, just try it. You have nothing to lose. There's this wonderful website, Black Carnivore. They have, you know, like these 21-day challenges. You should really just try it, you know, be a community and you can do this. And she's learning more and more. And I think because she had that stroke and it's been hammered into her head, meat is bad for you and it's somehow going to magically raise your blood pressure. She's scared too, but I feel like she's gaining confidence.
Well, and I mean, I understand that and I recognize that fear. And I think that it is, you know, I mean, we have to be respectful of that. But I wonder if saying to
Mm-hmm.
someone, look, you don't have to do this forever. Because so many people come to me and
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I'm thinking about this and I'm nervous, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, you know, you don't have to commit to anything forever. So don't
Mm-hmm.
commit, you know, just decide to try it. And I think that many of these changes you can see inside of 2 weeks. So it's not even like,
Yes.
you know, you got to do this like 6 months or anything like that. Like you will see a difference in some respect in 2 weeks. And then from that, you can
Yes.
decide whether that's enough to continue exploring or, you know, to just like, you know, turn around and walk away. So
Right.
I hope that your, you know, your mom, like if you can get her to just test her blood sugar on day 1 and test it again on
Mm-hmm.
day 14. And if,
Yeah.
you know, there's no difference there, then okay, maybe, you know, maybe it's not right for you. But if there's a difference, then, you know, you owe it to yourself to continue exploring it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So hopefully, mom, if you're watching this, I hope you
Yes.
listen to that and you give that a try because I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's yeah, this way of eating, it's really stunning what it can do for people. And yeah, and not enough of us know about it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's so true that not enough people know about this, that, you know, just how life-changing
Mhm.
it can be for people. Definitely. My kids, though, they're like little carnivore evangelists. Um, it's
Oh, are
kind
they
of
carnivore
embarrassing.
too? What about your husband?
So no, my kids and my husband are not carnivore. They are very meat heavy, and I do the grocery shopping, so any carbs they have are usually whole food carbs. But they realize what happened to me, that I was really unhealthy, and then now I only eat meat and I'm really healthy now. I made a complete turnaround. But we'll be at the park sometimes, and my son, he's 4 years old, and he'll go up to somebody, he'll be like, hey, you know, meat is healthy.
Somebody's gonna be like,
you
I gotta
know,
call
so,
DSS on this woman. She is
yeah,
just like
yeah,
filling her kid's head with all this nonsense. So wrong. So wrong.
yes,
Wow. Well,
yeah,
I totally appreciate that because when I was a kid, I loved meat. I never understood like kids would
okay.
complain about eating like meatloaf, and I'm like, what's the problem? That's the best thing. Just, you know, beef. But yeah, so if I could have as a kid eaten carnivore, I 100% would have been on board. And if
Okay.
you know, and I mean, I was already a sugarholic even back then, but if it were taken out and I was just eating, you know, cheeseburgers, bacon cheeseburgers, I would have been
Hmm.
100% fine with that. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah, meat was a highlight for me, but I don't know if I could have, I don't know if I, well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could have given up my mac and cheese and all the
Mhm.
junk food I was eating at the time, juice, candy.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, what's next? You are, getting ripped and shredded, continuing to stay healthy. Do you have any fitness or workout goals?
Yeah, well, I since being carnivore, it's given me like another brain, and I feel like I have all this potential now that's just let out of the box. So I've actually started a Carnivore Stories podcast because I'm making it my mission, to have these stories out there for somebody to just on a whim, like, hey, are there any carnivore stories? And to find this, and hopefully it has the impact on them it had on me to listen to these stories and listen how people are healing and just give it a try. Um, and I really, as far as my own fitness, I did go ahead and get certified as a personal trainer. So I'm trying to help women that are in the position I was in, because I had to figure out all this stuff all by myself. And so it's been really fun working with them and seeing them get healthier and stronger and looking better. But with my own fitness, I feel like there's no end goal. Like I can't ever see myself being like, oh, all right, I got that bicep I wanted. I'm done. That's it. It's just see how strong I can get. Some people will approach me and say, "Oh, well, have you ever thought about competing?" And I don't think that's for me. I could be wrong. Maybe down the road, I'm like this. I have this Wonder Woman figure, and I'm like, how could I not compete? I mean, look at me. but but not at the moment. No.
Yeah. Well, tell us, what is the name of your podcast and where can people find you to ask more questions?
Yes, my podcast is called Carnivore Stories. Okay, so if you go on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, and you type in Carnivore Stories, you'll find it, and it'll be a big picture of a steak, and it says Carnivore Stories. Um, and then if anybody out there would like to connect with me, I am on Instagram at meat Mrs. MRS Grubs Grubs. And on that page, I have a lot of what I'm eating on a regular basis, and my lifestyle, things I'm up to. And I also have another Instagram page, and that's at Unity YOUNITY_fit, where I post every single workout I do. Every time I'm at the gym, I record my workout and I'm posting it there with some inspirational messages to hopefully inspire you to get up, get moving. And then I also have a personal YouTube page. And if you search my name, Alyssa Grubner, I'll come up. And again, that's more of my lifestyle, my some gym vlogs, vacation vlog, grocery hauls. I just came out with a couple new videos people seem to like. The one was 12 things that happened to me in 12 months on carnivore, how to transition from a standard American diet to carnivore, and how you can tell if you're not eating enough on carnivore. So you might want to check that out too.
Awesome. Wonderful. So everybody, yeah, definitely go check that out. Follow her, subscribe, and let's get this message out there. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's interview and that it gives you inspiration, advice, and just the support that you need to keep going. Carnivore is great. Keep going with this, and we will see you next week. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.